It's arguably the most influential film in sci-fi history, a game changer in special effects, but most importantly, it's the first film in what would become one of the biggest franchises of all time, spawning countless spin-offs, TV shows, video games, and too many toys to count. Welcome back to ADP Reviews, everyone, and in the lead up to Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, I will be reviewing each film so far in the Star Wars series, including the spin-offs and TV series, all culminating in a review of The Rise of Skywalker in December. So, how does the experimental first film in this monumental space saga hold up? First, a brief synopsis for all of you who haven't seen it. Taking place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Star Wars is the story of farm boy Luke Skywalker, who yearns for a life of adventure. When two droids named R2-D2 and C-3PO are purchased by his uncle, Luke discovers that one of them is carrying an urgent message from Princess Leia Organa that must be shown to Obi-Wan Ben Kenobi, one of the last members of a race of peacekeepers known as the Jedi Knights. As it turns out, Princess Leia was kidnapped by the Galactic Empire's evil enforcer Darth Vader while trying to deliver the rebellion the schematics of the Empire's greatest weapon, the Death Star, a massive battle station with the power to destroy entire planets. Recruiting ace pilot and smuggler Han Solo and his co-pilot Chewbacca, Luke and his new companions must set out to deliver the Death Star plans into the hands of the rebellion. When this film came out, it was huge. Cinemagoers had never seen anything like Star Wars. And arguably, it's just as influential today as it was back then. However, with all the changes and special editions, does it still hold up just as well as it did back then? Well, let's look at what I like about this film, because there's a lot. First, the story. George Lucas took inspiration from several films and epics, including Akira Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress, and crafted his own unique story that will most likely be remembered more than Kurosawa's classic. While very similar, the characters and setting differentiate between the two enough to make Star Wars its own thing. Second, the characters. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi, all of these characters are so memorable and relatable that even people who haven't seen the films can likely identify them. Luke is relatable because we can identify with his dreams of adventure and purpose. Leia is the epitome of a strong, kick-ass female character who fights for what she believes in and never gives in to despair. Han Solo is like a cowboy in space with a moral compass that doesn't always point the right way, which makes him much more compelling. All the actors play these characters perfectly, making some of the corny dialogue sound much more engaging. Third, the groundbreaking visual effects. Industrial Light and Magic showed what they were capable of in this film. Not only do so many of the effects still hold up today, but there's a story behind each and every one of them that keeps you researching for hours. One of my favorites is, of course, that first iconic shot of Princess Leia's ship being hunted down by the Star Destroyer over the skies of Tatooine. It gets me in the mood every time and it still blows me away. Fourth, the music. John Williams is one of the greatest composers of all time. If you don't believe me, just listen to this soundtrack. These are all timeless pieces that will stick with you forever, especially the main theme and Binary Sunset. You can run these themes by anyone who's never even seen the movies and they'll probably know where it's from. So, is this movie perfect? No, there are a few issues. First, the dialogue. Most of the dialogue in this film is fantastic and gives us extremely memorable lines. But there's also some very corny dialogue too, which isn't helped by some of the deliveries of these lines. A lot of Luke's lines become unintentionally funny when he spews them out in a whiny tone, and Carrie Fisher's line, "I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board," seems really cheesy when coming from her on-again, off-again, quasi-British accent. Second, the size of the film. Now by this I mean the size in terms of how big the galaxy is. Don't get me wrong, it's big. But because the budget for this film wasn't as high as George Lucas would have liked, he wasn't able to show many of the planets or environments outside of a desert for Tatooine, a forest for Yavin, and some impressive but tame closed sets for inside the Death Star. We would later see more Star Wars films capable of showing huge sections of the galaxy that, when looking back, really outshine A New Hope. For example, compare a shot of Tatooine to a shot of Coruscant from the prequels. Yeah, it's very impressive seeing Tatooine, especially with all the work they put in to make it look like an alien world. But with that said, it's still just a desert. When compared to the sweeping city skyline of Coruscant, there's really no comparison as to which one is more visually engaging. Third, some of the effects are pretty dated now. While the majority of the effects still hold up, some effects like the blast from the laser guns and the lightsaber blades look a lot more fake the more you watch the film. Still good, but a bit primitive, especially if you're watching the unedited version that was released in theaters back in 1977. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up that A New Hope is one of the films that is constantly being edited. No matter what version of it you watch, you're almost never watching the version that was released in theaters in '77. No one really knows why, but for some reason, George Lucas, upon release of the special editions, said to himself, you know, I want these films to be the ones that people remember. I want the updated effects. I want the added scenes. I want Greedo shooting first. I want CGI Jabba the Hutt added in. And a lot of us, including myself, still think that we should get the original unaltered versions on DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, whatever you want. But some official release would be great. However, Lucas has decided that he doesn't want those released. Those weren't his visions. The special editions, the Blu-ray, those are his completed visions of the original trilogy. And a lot of those changes, they just don't make a lot of sense, or they don't add much, or they can even take away from the experience in certain ways. As mentioned before, one thing you're never going to hear the end of is the argument of who shot first, Greedo or Han. A subsection of fans really appreciate George's updates to the original trilogy with the special editions, and they stand by the argument that Greedo shot first because that's what George Lucas says. Everyone else, on the other hand, still stands by the fact that Han shot first, or Han was the only one that shot because that's how it was in the original film. Honestly, the change never really bothered me much. It's 2 seconds and it doesn't change much. What does bother me sometimes the more I watch it is that scene where they added Jabba the Hutt in CGI. It just does not look very good, especially the special edition VHS version. The Blu-ray version looks a little bit better, but it's still really fake. It doesn't add much because you get a lot of recycled dialogue from Han here. Honestly, the special editions have never really bothered me, but they don't really help the experience either. So with all that negativity out of the way, there's got to be some more stuff that I like about the film too, right? Well, yeah, the performances are great. This was Mark Hamill's real big breakout role as Luke Skywalker. And honestly, he does a really good job with what he's given. You can tell he's still finding his footing. Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan is one of my favorite performances in cinema, even if Alec Guinness himself didn't really appreciate the role all that much. Harrison Ford is great as Han Solo in the role that made him a household name. It's awesome seeing a character with such a shoot first, ask questions later kind of way about him. Then of course you have Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, who I'm convinced is still the pinnacle of strong female action heroes. And of course, where would Darth Vader be without the menacing voice provided to him by James Earl Jones? The performances are what really tie this film together. Their chemistry and the way they all work off of each other is just a joy to watch. So, what are my final thoughts? While a few elements may not have aged particularly well, Star Wars A New Hope shines brightest in its imagination, characters, and memorable moments. When I think of Star Wars, this is the first film that pops into my head. I think of Luke staring at the twin sunsets on Tatooine. I think of the X-Wings heading towards the Death Star. I think of Vader making his big entrance into Leia's ship. To me, this movie embodies everything nostalgic about Star Wars and why it's just as popular today as it was back then. I give Star Wars A New Hope 4 stars out of 5. The Force is strong with this one. Thank you for watching, everyone, and get ready because more Star Wars is on the way.